Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great to be back in Central Florida. Thanks so much. It's a beautiful day, and we've got a pretty important announcement to announce the appointment of Florida's next United States Senator. And these are always significant appointments, but I think right now appointments like these are more significant than ever. This is a time for action and a time for Washington, D.C. to deliver results to the American people. There are no more excuses for Republicans. We can't choose the easy path here. We must be able to do what it takes, make the hard decisions necessary to usher in a revival of the American experiment. Now, President Trump's election was remarkable, and he earned a mandate for change. And yes, the results themselves, winning the popular vote, winning the swing states, was certainly something that's noteworthy. What was more noteworthy is no candidate has ever had to endure a flurry of bogus prosecutions and 2 assassination attempts and having the entire legacy media apparatus doing everything they can to prevent his return to office. So we as Republicans cannot squander this opportunity. And that means we need a Congress, both the House and the Senate, that will rise to the occasion and make history. No more business as usual in Washington, D.C. Now, of all the issues that the American people rendered a verdict on, there's perhaps no issue that's been more significant over these past 4 years than immigration and the open southern border. The American people do not want to have our borders opened. We are a sovereign nation, and we must control who comes into our country on the terms that we as Americans set. That means we not only need to support President Trump's agenda to secure and shut the border, but we also need to make sure that we're enforcing the laws inside the United States. We've called a special session of the Florida legislature because Florida is going to be working with the Trump administration to make sure our immigration laws are enforced. I don't want to see some illegal alien gang just be able to operate and then you only do anything once they've already committed serious crimes. Identify them and get them out of the country. We must make illegal immigration illegal once again. The other issue that clearly animated voters' momentous decision in November is the economic crunch facing people all across the United States of America. This economic crunch is government-induced. We are currently now, thanks to federal policies, locked in a vicious cycle of deficits, debt, money printing, and crushing inflation. We need Republicans in the Congress to stop this spending spree once and for all. Downsize the federal government, eliminate wasteful programs, abolish certain agencies, and empower the states to take over the functions that our founding fathers originally intended. Florida has shown that this can be done. We have cut taxes every year since I've been governor. I have had the opportunity to veto billions and billions of dollars in wasteful spending, and we have paid down 36% of the state's historical debt. From the 1840s to the present, we've paid down 36% just since 2019, and it's not an accident that because of those policies, since I took office in 2019, Florida leads the nation in economic growth amongst all 50 states. We've shown it can be done. They need to get it done. We also have a mandate as Republicans to restore our constitutional order. Our founding fathers never intended there to be a fourth branch of government, this sprawling administrative permanent bureaucracy. We cannot tolerate a massive concentration of power that is unaccountable to the American people. We must reconstitutionalize this federal government. We also understand the role that the courts, particularly Supreme Court justices, play in enforcing the Constitution, and particularly the constitutional limits on federal power. We need a senator that understands the important role that Senate plays in confirming Supreme Court appointments as well as lower courts, and the model for justices need to be justices like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. Finally, Republicans must fight the woke agenda and they must defeat the radical left. Florida has fought and won against the woke agenda. We have won time and time again against the political left, and right now the Democratic Party in this state lies in ruins, and we are a solid Republican state, which people didn't think was possible even 5 years ago. At the national level, we need to rid our institutions, federal agencies, universities, corporations of the pernicious woke ideology and woke agenda. We need to restore common sense, and we need to restore basic American principles throughout our society once again. Amen. Now, in appointing a U.S. Senator, I initially put out several different criteria. One, I want somebody that's going to work with President Trump to deliver on the mandate he earned from the American people. I want a senator that's going to be willing to lean in against the excessive spending and cut spending and stop the inflation. I want somebody that understands that the federal bureaucracy is run amok and it must be held to account, and we need 3 branches of government, not 4 branches of government. And we need somebody that understands the fight against illegal immigration, is willing to shut the border, and importantly, make sure any legal immigration to this country is putting Americans first. Can't be bringing foreigners in to displace our own people in key positions. So this is something that I thought about long and hard. We did a lot of research. We got a number of great candidates throughout the state of Florida, and many of them, I think, could have done a good job. But the final criteria I used was, because you can say all those things and say you stand for it, I wanted somebody with a demonstrated record of delivering results on those important issues. Talk is cheap. We need people that have demonstrated fidelity to these principles with their actions. So that is why today I'm proud to announce that I am selecting our Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to serve as our next U.S. Senator. So many of you know her. She's obviously been on the ballot twice statewide and won big victories. She's honorably served our people as her time as Attorney General over these last 6 years. She's a 5th-generation native of Plant City, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area, and even was named queen of the famous Strawberry Festival back in her youth. She's a triple Gator graduate of the University of Florida, and she's built an impressive resume as a commercial litigator and as a federal prosecutor. When she was an assistant U.S. attorney here in the Middle District of Florida, she handled gun and fraud cases. Later, when she was in the Tampa Narcotics Division, she was recognized for her prosecutorial excellence by federal agencies. In 2007, she became Florida's youngest circuit court judge at the tender age of 31, where she championed initiatives for at-risk children and expanded access to legal representation for vulnerable Floridians. And that's all great, but really where the rubber hits the road is once you get an opportunity to serve statewide in the state of Florida and be the Attorney General, are you just biding your time, or are you making the most of it to deliver big things for the people that sent you there? And I'm happy to say we've had an Attorney General who has been somebody that has acted time and time again to support the values that we all share, whether that's illegal immigration, opioid and fentanyl crisis, human trafficking. She has stood strong time and time again. Most recently, in this past year, filing lawsuits and joining lawsuits to take on the weaponization of law enforcement that targeted then candidate Donald Trump. She took on Jack Smith for his politically motivated persecution of the former president, fought back against the rogue Attorney General of New York for her politicizing justice, led the Florida investigation into the second Trump assassination attempt in Palm Beach, even as the federal government continues to try to block her efforts. She's been a national leader in fighting the Biden administration on many different fronts, including on immigration. She's not only filed more than a dozen separate lawsuits, but she's actually won against Biden with his reckless border policies. She's demanded appropriately the impeachment of Alexander Mayorkas and the designation of Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. In her role as AG, she has stood strong for law and order. She believes in putting criminals in jail, not releasing them back onto the street where they will offend again. She does not support soft on crime leftist prosecutors. In fact, we have removed prosecutors here in the state of Florida, and she has stood with us every step of the way, and we have won those lawsuits as a result of her efforts. She's also rejected DEI, ESG, gender ideology, and supported our efforts to ensure Florida's education is free from impositions of the radical left. When COVID was raging, few were willing to stand up across this country. We in Florida established our state as a beachhead of liberty, as the free state of Florida, and she was with us every step of the way. We beat the Biden administration that had continued to keep our cruise lines closed, and we liberated the cruise industry because of her lawsuit. We also beat Biden on the employer vaccine mRNA mandate, which was going to have people lose their jobs if they didn't take this shot that many people didn't want. So her efforts were really critical in achieving those success for medical freedom. She was also a staunch opponent and helped us defeat Amendments 3 and 4 in the most recent November election. She sued in the Supreme Court against Harvard's race-based affirmative action discrimination admission process. She sued Biden administration to prevent brutal transgender surgeries on these minor kids. And she challenged the federal accreditor system to free university from politicized leftist accreditors. She's also fought to strengthen the security integrity of our elections here in the state of Florida, which we treat very significant. She has led prosecutions of voter fraud cases against illegal aliens who voted here in the state of Florida. She's also supported other states as they attempt to secure their election systems, including in Virginia, where she urged the Supreme Court to uphold their removal of illegal aliens from the voter rolls. When it was revealed that FEMA aid workers under President Biden discriminated against Trump supporters who were impacted by last year's hurricanes here in Florida, she filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against those who were responsible, and Florida still remains the first and only state to hold these people accountable for their political discrimination. She's an outspoken proponent of the state of Israel and has battled against anti-Semitism in the business world, academia, and even taken on the United Nations, which she has pledged as a senator to defund once and for all. She has fought against overreaching federal agencies like the ATF, the EPA, and the FDA to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans and to prevent bureaucratic entities from encroaching on our God-given freedoms. And then when it comes to our nation's foremost adversary, China, Ashley has been integral in our state's effort to defend Florida against Chinese influence. She defended our laws preventing China from purchasing land in the state of Florida. She worked with the Florida Pension Fund to divest state holdings from China and Chinese companies, and she opposed China's ability to spy on Americans through the use of social media apps. So in every major battle we have had since I have been governor, she has been with us every step of the way. It's not just talk, it's results. And these results are very, very important. and she understands the gravity of the moment. We may not have an opportunity like this in the near future. This is a once-in-a-decade, maybe even once-in-a-generation opportunity in this current Congress is ultimately going to determine whether we do usher in that revival of the American experiment, or is it just going to be status quo, passing the buck, and nothing ever changes? So I'm pleased to be able to introduce to you, for her first words as the senator appointee from the state of Florida, our Attorney General and your next United States Senator, Ashley Moody.
In true governorship fashion, he gave me a mere couple of hours to figure out what I was going to say to you. But that is because he is deliberate and takes nothing lightly and understands the importance of this role. Governor, I want you to know I will not let you down, I will not let the citizens of Florida down, and I will not let my country down. It was just 6 years ago that I met this very eager, passionate guy who wanted to be the governor of Florida and said, if we go in there and we implement conservative policy, if we scale back, make sure we return this to a limited government, we will prosper. And look at what Florida has done since. We lead the nation in net and migration, new business formation, and law and order. I can go on, and it has been at the leadership and direction with this guy right here. And I am proud not to just say I have fought alongside you for 6 years, but I'm proud to call you a friend, and I am very honored with this nomination. Thank you so much. I will bring the same persistence and passion and tenacity as a United States Senator that I have brought as Florida's Attorney General. If you have worked with me and fought with me over the last 6 years, you know I don't think of this as a job. I think of it as a calling. Every day I go to work, every decision that I make, every person I hire, I do so with the understanding that the people of Florida gave me this opportunity, and I want to deliver on what I assured them, and that was we were going to protect their rights. We were going to protect the autonomy of this state. We were going to protect our communities. And I believe that we have done that, and I think we have to take that same direction to the United States Senate. This guy used to be in Congress, and he says to me and has said to me, I don't know why anybody would want that job. I said to him, I kind of agree with you, Governor. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty energetic. I like to get things done, focus on problems, solve the problems, deliver those to the people that hired you, your bosses, the citizens. And there's a lot of deadlock in Washington. And then I thought more about that. And I thought if every person with the same energy, the same love, the respect for our founding principles, the ideals on which this country was built on, if every person like that with that personality said, I don't think I'd like serving in Congress, then we'd never change that culture. And so you're probably right. I probably won't like it. But I'm ready to show up and fight for this nation and fight for President Trump to deliver the American First agenda on day one. What has angered me the most as Attorney General, as I've had to fight the Biden administration over the last 4 years, when we have seen policy after rule, after financial decisions, spending out of these agencies, as the agencies have gotten bigger, as they have taken more power, as they have tried to tell the states what to do more and more and more, all that does is take the will of the people, the want of the people through their elected representatives in Congress, and turns this into a country we don't even recognize anymore. And whether it's agencies making these decisions when lawmakers should, unelected bureaucrats, or whether it's international organizations making decisions that our lawmakers should, we cannot stand for that. The only way to return this country to the people who govern it, is to make sure we have a strong Congress doing its job, passing laws, and actually approving the regulations that these unelected bureaucrats are trying to cram down on the American people. And I pledge to you, as a United States Senator, supporting the REINS Act, supporting any effort to rein back in our out-of-control federal agencies, make sure politics is pushed out of it, make sure we bring down spending. I am all for that, and I've got the backs of the American people, DOJ, and President Trump on that. I am driven by many things in life. I will bring the influence of many things in my life, my experiences certainly, but I am driven by my faith in God, first and foremost. I am driven by the fact that I am a mother and I still have a kid in school. And whether it was protecting children from social media, from the dangers of fentanyl, the poison that's being pushed into our nation as the result of a wide open border, whether it's protecting our soldiers, the oldest boy in our family is a soldier. So whether it is supporting them while they are abroad or after they come home, I have their backs. And last but not least, God has blessed me with an amazing husband who's with me, Justin. When I told him I wanted to leave the bench, now mind you, I may be the first senator, Governor, I don't know if this went into your plan. He was most excited I'm a trained accountant, so I can shrink the bloat of the federal government. But I also served over a decade in the judiciary. I have now served in the executive branch. I may be the only United States Senator that is now in my third branch of government and bringing all of that with me to the role. An amazing husband who has watched and been there with me while I railed on what was happening to this country as millions poured illegally into our country, watching the devastation and crime and overdose rates in our country. He has stood by me, never doubted when I said I wanted to resign from being a judge and travel around the state and be unemployed and get people to hire me to be their lawyer. He said, I've got your back. Partly because he's my husband, partly because he's a law enforcement officer and he knew he needed someone as the top cop that had their backs. So, to my husband, law enforcement officer, and my new family of law enforcement that has been with me over the last 6 years, you better believe, as a United States Senator, I will work for you, those that stand on that thin line between chaos and order, between safety and crime. I have got your back. I've got your six. And we will all work to protect the American people and make all of our cities and states stronger and safer together. And so I have one message right now to President Trump and to my new colleagues on the United States Senate. America first. Let's get it done. Thanks so much.
And so she will be taking office most likely on the afternoon of January 20th. We anticipate Senator Rubio to get confirmed very quickly after the inauguration of the 47th president, President Trump. I want to thank Senator Rubio for his service in the United States Senate. I think he will serve the country ably as Secretary of State, and we need it because the last 4 years has been a total disaster under the Biden-Harris administration. That's true at the border. It's true on economy, but it's certainly true on foreign policy and national security. So I'll be happy to take some questions. What do we got?
Governor, what is the state doing about the My Access portal? For the last year, we've spoken to some Floridians who have had issues getting...
Tell you, I'll answer questions on this first, and then if you want to does anyone have any questions on the Senate stuff or anything? Yes.
Yes, I'd like to know from you and from Senator Moody what the federal Congress and the state legislature ought to be doing right now, specifically in terms of policies that should be passed in both bodies to enable Trump's agenda on immigration.
Well, I think, as you know, we have called a special session, as I'm authorized to do as governor, for January 27th, so a week after President Trump's inauguration this Monday. And the focus of that is enacting policies so that the state of Florida, every city, every county, and the state are working with the federal government to enforce federal immigration laws. As I mentioned in my comments, you have these gangs that are in the country, and basically Biden, unless they commit a serious crime, just lets them run wild. Once we identify them, we're going to pass legislation that says if you enter Florida as an illegal, that is an offense we can hold you accountable for, and we'll immediately turn them over to the feds, and then the feds will send them back to their home country. We're also going to we've removed a lot of incentives, enticements for people to come to Florida illegally, but one of the ones that's still there from 2014 is giving in-state tuition to illegals. That is wrong. We got to put Floridians first, make sure they're getting the tuition discounts, and so when you do that, we will have no enticements in Florida. You're not allowed to give an illegal alien an ID card, a driver's license, a county ID card, a private ID. We don't allow that because we understand how that can be used for fake employment, for voting, all these things. So we've taken a very strong stand on that, but we are going to require state and locals to come. Now, I think President Trump's going to have a bunch of executive orders that are going to overturn Biden's executive orders on the border and immigration, so that's going to be very, very welcome. But I do think the Congress, and I know the Attorney General as a senator will support this, they need to overhaul the way we do immigration, period. No more asylum fraud, people coming and they're just claiming asylum when they're just coming across the border. It's been a massive fraud on the American people for many, many years. We also need to make sure that we do have a border wall built to prevent people from coming in areas where there aren't points of entry, which is important. And then the legal immigration system, you know, there's some people that say as long as it's legal, it doesn't matter. I disagree with that. When you have programs that bring foreigner workers in that will work for less than Americans and the Americans get fired, that's wrong. That should not happen in the United States of America. We need to focus on assimilating people instead of having millions of people come, whether it's legal or illegal. We've got to get these numbers right. We got to promote a culture of assimilation, and we have not done a good job of that over the last very many decades. So I think Congress has some work to do. I think the president can do a lot on his own. We will be in Florida when we enact these policies, working hand in hand, and that'll be a force multiplier. And people will say, well, why do it now? Why not wait till May? And I just understand, if you waited till the regular session, it would really not even be till July 1st, because that's typically when these bills take effect. But why now? Well, one, we have a sense of urgency. We recognize this moment is very significant. I have heard Republicans moan about the border and the immigration for years. Okay, fine. Well, now you have an opportunity to do it. So let's get up there and do what the people sent us here to do. So we all should have that sense of urgency regardless of what else is going on. But then practically, President's going to come in. He doesn't have a lot of resources at his disposal with what Biden's leaving him. He's going to need to go to Congress, get funding for the border wall, get funding for more detention beds, get funding for more ICE and other things. And that's just going to take time. Even if Congress moves very quickly, that's going to take months to be able to get that done. And then when the money actually gets put in, it's going to be very difficult. So Florida, if we're there a week after President takes office and we're saying we're in this fight, we're saying local governments have responsibility to work with federal to enforce immigration law. We're providing funding so that they're able to continue to do their normal tasks. Because sometimes people say, oh, well, law enforcement, they don't want to focus on immigration. They just want to focus on this. They have limited resources. Okay, fine, we'll give you more resources. But just understand, if you successfully enforce immigration laws, you will have less crime. It just go look. I mean, I was talking to Grady Judd, like Polk County. You know, you'll have these people on a weekend, a lineup, and a lot of them are legally in this country to begin with. So it will save taxpayers money ultimately to make illegal immigration illegal again. And that's what we have to do. And I know, and here's the thing, I care about your record. Ashley Moody, as Attorney General, never had any blemish on immigration. It was always strong. She's never been a squish on any of these issues. And it's important. I mean, that's the part of the problem. She'll go up there and she'll be part of the enforcement caucus, not the amnesty caucus, and that's what we need.
Governor, do you anticipate that the state or local municipalities will have to set up new facilities to
So the question on facility, so I don't think the locals will. I think we in the state will probably be willing to help with that regard. We're going to coordinate with the people, either both in the White House and who's overseeing immigration, to see what would make sense. So it's possible the state does it. I don't anticipate you're going to see the locals necessarily doing that. It may be temporary and then immediate transfer to the feds or to the state, but I don't foresee necessarily the locals necessarily doing it. Now, some of them may want to do it, and we'll have funding, they can, but I think the main thing is forcing the law, working with ICE to remove swiftly people who are here illegally. And I can tell you, we have, the hurricanes. We have Hurricane Helene, massive storm surge across the Tampa Bay, coastal Tampa Bay, Pinellas County, some of these others. And after that, we said, you loot, we shoot. We're not going to sit there and let you do this, but some people would still do it. So they Pinellas County arrests 45 people for looting after Hurricane Helene. 41 of them were illegally in this country. And I'm just thinking to myself, what the heck is going on here? So those days are over. We are going to work together, and we're going to be able to get this job done. And if we don't do it now, it's just never going to get done. Let's just be honest. This is our opportunity to make it happen. Yep.
Are you at liberty to say when you actually told now Senator Moody that she was getting the job? Is it
yesterday evening? So we were doing a press conference in Polk County yesterday about the immigration plans, and I said, are you flying back to Tallahassee? I said, I got a Cal, I'm driving up. When are you going to get in town? She's like, well, sometime in the late afternoon. I was like, all right, well, give me a call, come on over. And I was like, hopefully you can clear your calendar tomorrow morning, because it's go time, so we're going to do it. And part of it was, we had a lot of great candidates. I had mentioned publicly, even though I think highly of people like Corey Mills, and I love Kat Kamak. She is unbelievable. But the issue is we have currently, in 4 days, we'll have 217 Republicans to 215 Democrats in the House. So if I take Kat and put her in the Senate, who knows what could happen, right? You could have deaths, you could have resignation. And so I just didn't want to be a part of potentially turning that over for there. And so even though I was impressed, I just couldn't do it, and I didn't want to jeopardize the president's agenda by doing that. And I know neither of them necessarily were happy with that, but that's just the reality. And then we had some other great people that we talk with. Our Secretary of State, Cord Byrd, is very, very strong on election integrity. When he was in the legislature, he opposed weak immigration policies, incursions on Second Amendment when Republicans were pushing it. And that's the type of courage, that I want to see when we're talking about dealing with some of those folks. We had Senator Collins from Tampa. The guy has given limbs for this country, and he's a warrior, and he's only been in the state Senate for 2 years, and he's already amassed huge achievements. So I think they're all going to do very well in the future, and so I was impressed. And we also reviewed many other people too. Those were kind of the last 5 or 6 that I think were in the mix. But ultimately, I can get a binder on somebody, I can watch some of their interviews, whatever. But I've also been alive working for 6 years alongside the Attorney General, and she's never let us down once. Not one time in 6 years, and that matters to me. And so she was always someone that, was near the top of the list. And so but I also just understand, these things, you just gotta let it set, make sure you're comfortable, and then pull the trigger. Yep.
just a quick follow-up? So who are the likely Moody replacements? And totally separate, but associated to what you said. Will you bring back any Florida Highway Patrol people from Texas to Florida to deal with this?
So on the Attorney General, my Chief of Staff, James Uthmeyer, is kind of like Ashley. He's proven himself in these fights. And I think she's got big shoes to fill, but I think he'll do a good job doing that. So you can anticipate that. I'm not going to make the appointment before it's available, but I think that's something that will happen. Now, so yes, we're gonna use the resources to best benefit Floridians. The reason why we've helped Texas is because Biden wouldn't help Texas, and so the states have to band together. Just like Texas will send people to help us when we have hurricane response, we sent there. And I'll tell you, we did it on and off for Biden's whole term. And, I'm like, do these guys like doing it? Like, ultimately, when you're in government, when you're in service, if you get orders, you do it, right? You don't necessarily, but people appreciated the mission. They felt they were making a difference in very difficult circumstances. And so I'm glad that our folks really worked hard and made a big impact. But at the same time, we now are going to have much different policies on the southern border. And I don't anticipate Florida needing to play a supporting role there, because I think the federal government's going to be leading and Texas can support, and I think the results are going to be so much better. I think it's going to be really, really significant. We have assets here in Florida. Our highway patrol will be in. See, I can order the state people to do it. Highway patrol, you pull someone over illegal, just call ICE and let's just do it, right? So they can do that. FDLE can do it. Fish and Wildlife, these folks come in on boats. How crazy is this? We have boats that help the Coast Guard stop boats from Haiti and Bahamas and Cuba and everything. If you stop the boat before it reaches land, then the Coast Guard immediately, you give them to the Coast Guard, they send them back to Haiti or Bahamas or wherever, like clockwork. But if they touch land, then somehow Biden lets them stay and they won't send them back. How dumb is that policy that we can do? So what I want is the federal government empower us. If somebody shows up in the Florida Keys, we say, okay, here you go, you're coming in and you're going back. And if you do that, if they know that even if they make land, it doesn't matter, then you're going to see, we've already seen the numbers plummet because we've supplemented the Coast Guard. Coast Guard does a good job. They don't have enough resources. And it's not a priority for Biden. But if you do that, you will be able to really, really dry up, because no one's going to want to take these boat voyages across dangerous waters knowing that even if they make land, they're still going back. So we've got to do that. I think it's really, really significant. So we're going to use a lot of resources here. I think the border is going to be in much better shape on January 20th.
Governor, on a separate issue, in Orange County, the state attorney, can you make a decision on anything that you might do about the state attorney as well? And then separately, in Dade County, some folks there's been some calls from the GOP leader there to remove the sheriff from Dade County. Any comment on anything?
If you read Florida's Constitution, the governor has the constitutional authority to suspend elected officials at the county level for based on a number of criteria: misfeasance, malfeasance, incompetence, neglect of duty, drunkenness. There may be another one or two, but those are the main ones. And when a public official triggers those, or they only need to trigger one of it, I won't hesitate to act. Monique Worrell did that in her first term as state attorney. I had people asking me to remove her for a long time, and I said, look, I don't like what she's doing, but you got to give me the goods. And so they finally gave the goods. And I think one of the problems with how that went down is, the Florida Senate has a rule that says, well, if they file lawsuits, then we're just not going to bring them to trial in the Florida Senate. And that let her basically just skate through, and she could say, oh, I was unjustly suspended. But what if you go in front of the Senate and they convict you, then that's the end. So I hope the Senate, and I'm going to talk to the Senate president about changing that rule. They can still delay if they need to, but I think they've incentivized these people. Andrew Warren went to court for like 2 years, and he lost. We won that, but he never went in front of the Florida Senate. And yes, he got voted out of office, or he got voted down when he tried to run again. But a lot of that is because Hillsborough County is now nominally red county. This judicial circuit is blue. So in a presidential election, if you have a D next to your name here, there's not many places in Florida that's true anymore, but here you have a benefit, right? And so she was running against the incumbent that was not affiliated with a party. So in a partisan race, whereas if the Senate had acted, I think it's going to be different. So now here we are. People are in office. So if you conduct yourself in a way that triggers my constitutional obligations to suspend you, I will do it. I will follow through with that. And so so it's not just about here, it's anywhere in the state of Florida. Folks should just be on notice. This is a valid power. It was not necessarily exercised as robustly, I think, until I became, because remember, when I became governor, first week in office, we got rid of the sheriff of Broward who bungled the Parkland operation. People said, well, you know, that was almost a year after Parkland. There was no accountability, so we brought that. We then got rid of the Palm Beach supervisor of elections who botched the 2018 election and previous elections as well. We got rid of the Okaloosa County superintendent who failed this really tragic case where she was sweeping things under the rug, or not living up to the law. So we did that. And then we've done since with the leftist prosecutors. We've had other officials that we've had to do. So it's important because if you think about it, where's the check and balance against a local official? The people that framed this Constitution in Florida placed it with the governor to suspend, and then the Florida Senate to sit in judgment and ultimately decide whether to convict. I just think we want to do this quickly and get the job done. One more. We'll go. I want to focus on the topic here. I want to focus on the topics here today.
I'll be quick. I believe that you're happy being the governor of Florida. But could you be happier if you were at a national level type role, if Pete Hegseth doesn't go through?
So listen, what I've said is, how can you be the most impactful? Is there another governor in the country that's been more impactful over the last 6 years? You guys? I mean, so. And, you know, it's not just the governor. I mean, the Attorney General's been there. We've had some great partners in the legislature. Done a lot of great things, you know, sometimes it's been smooth, sometimes it's not been so smooth, but eventually we land the ship and get things done. And that's true whether it's look at what we've paid off for state debt. We have the lowest per capita state debt in the entire United States of America. If the federal government could follow that, we'd be in much better shape. We have enacted policies to combat rioting and looting and everything you saw in the summer of 2020. That does not fly in the state of Florida, and we back the men and women of law enforcement in a really, really big way. We have universal school choice, so parents can send their kid to the school of their choice. We have more school choice in Florida. If you just looked at Florida school choice, we have over a third of the entire country's school choice participants, which is phenomenal. We also, we used to say Florida is where woke goes to die. We killed things like ESG and DEI and the entire woke agenda. We got it out of our schools, and people know that stuff's just not going to fly in the state of Florida. We also stood strong when very few were willing to during the most hysterical days of COVID. When I was saying I ordered the schools to remain open, oh my gosh. What the flack I got for that? Are you kidding me? Teachers union suing us, trying to get the schools closed, all these things, and yet people will come up to me to this day and say, if it wasn't for that, I don't know if our family would have been able to make, our kids needed to be in school. We did an executive order because the legislature at the time wasn't willing to legislate. We banned forced masking of school children in the state of Florida, and that was very controversial at the time. Now it's something that's good. And if it wasn't for Florida during COVID, this country would not have recovered. We wouldn't have gotten out of the lockdown culture. We're the ones that broke the back of the Fauciism that was in this country. And that was a very important role for this state to play. Election integrity, we've led the nation in election integrity. On issue after issue, we've delivered big results. So ultimately, it's, are you making a big impact for the people that you represent? I'm not saying Florida governor is the maximal you can possibly have in elected office, but it's pretty darn close when you look at that. And so we got more work to do. Fortunately, we've been able to accomplish whatever I promised to do, I've done, and then some. So we're basically playing with house money at this point, and that's great. And we're going to do more, and we're going to keep having fun. But you know, I kind of got a kick out of people speculating like, will he appoint himself to the United States Senate? And I'm like, for anyone that spent 5 minutes with me, I don't think there would be much speculation that the answer to that would be no. But it was not something that I think is, so we'll hold the fort down here in the state of Florida. I think we can be very helpful to help the president's agenda. I think we can play a good supporting role when senators like Ashley Moody are fighting for us, and we can be there in support for some of those policies to bring power back to the states. But this is really, really significant. You know, we basically have an experiment ongoing in this country when people vote with their feet. And if you look over the last many years, we've been the place people have come to. Even 23, when, you know, you had, or 23, 24, you know, you had illegals leaving, which was good because of our policies. But, you know, you had a lot of people that wanted to come, and we've continued to build the economy and all these other things. So it's really, really positive. I think we can be very, very supportive in a variety of ways of what's going on there. But I've never asked for anything, and I'm not in a position where I'm being offered anything. So we'll keep the fight going. We look forward. I'll be up at the inauguration. You know, we got to figure out. So they're going to vote on Rubio. Maybe I have to stay around to help Ashley get sworn in the Senate that afternoon. I was planning on not doing the balls because they're having the national championship game that night. And you know, my son Mason, he was in the first round of the college football playoffs. He got 3 of the 4 games right. In the next round, the quarterfinals, he got 3 of the 4 right. The semifinals, he got both games right. So now we have Notre Dame, Ohio State, and the First Lady prodded him on his decision, and he said he's not ready to make a decision yet on that. So when we get one, we'll put it out just in time for you guys to place your bets. But I think the problem that he's having is, so he is a huge Florida State fan. I'm not going to tell him that Ashley went to Florida because, and it's not anything Casey and I have done. I mean, I didn't go there, Casey didn't go there, but we're in Tallahassee, right, as a family since I got elected, and he goes to games, he does all this. So he's like really, really passionate. So we went to the Notre Dame game in South Bend, Florida State and Notre Dame. And for those do we have any Florida State fans that are willing to admit on that? They lost by 50 to Notre Dame. And so that wasn't good. But, you know, he got to go around campus. He saw Touchdown Jesus. He got to go to the field. He got to do all that. So I think he kind of likes it. So I think but he's only in first grade, but he's smart. He knows sports. And so I think he really wants Notre Dame. But I think he's watched Ohio State, particularly their first 2 games in the playoffs, and they didn't do as impressive against Texas, but they were still pretty strong. And I think he's just worried that if he goes with his heart, or does he go with his head? And I think his head's pulling him to Ohio State, but I think his heart's pulling him to Notre Dame. And so if he comes to a decision, we'll make sure to disseminate that very quickly. Thanks, everybody.